we've talked about dates being important in China, and obviously this is the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square crackdown. But dates are also important in Hong Kong. We're going to talk very quickly about those dates with three extraordinary, courageous Hong Kong citizens and civil society leaders. First is Cheuk Yan. He is a leader in the Hong Kong Free Trade Union movement. He has been a legislator in Hong Kong, and he is one of the leaders of the Hong Kong Alliance that every June 4 organizes the candlelight vigil in Victoria Park, which is the only place on Chinese soil that the massacre can be commemorated. We will go then to Mak Yin-ting, who has spent many years as a leader of the Hong Kong Journalists Association. She was a working journalist in 1989, and ever since then has been on the front line of press freedom, including doing annual studies of its diminishment in Hong Kong. We'll go then to Martin Lee, the longtime democracy leader, lawyer, barrister, and defender of press freedom, the rule of law, and human rights in Hong Kong. So I'm going to start with Cheuk Yan. And I said before, dates were very important. We have, we're at the 30th anniversary of Tiananmen Square. Where were you? Can you tell us your story?
Yes. So I'm on T-shirt because I'm from the streets, you see. And when I started in the labor movement back in the 80s, and then come 89, and then you suddenly realize that your dream come true, because your dream had always been that people come out to, take their own fate into their hands. And I think that is what the whole 89 democracy means for me. People coming out, all Chinese citizens come out to demand for democracy. And of course, for Hong Kong people, I was suddenly waken up in a way that, the people of Hong Kong are no longer so-called economic animal. They really come out also, 1 million people coming out. And I remember on one night, just one night of concert by the artists at that time, 12 million Hong Kong dollar was raised in one night. And the problem now is then suddenly you have 12 million. And then the Hong Kong Alliance had a meeting and say, who is going to go to Beijing to deliver all this money to the students? So I was the one that volunteered. I want to go there. And then I was there on the 30th of May, 1989. And of course, go through the June 4th. And I would make it short. And then on June 5th, after the Tiananmen Square massacre, Martin arranged a plane to get all the activists and journalists back to Hong Kong. And I was going through the custom. And then when I went through the custom, it's a bit strange. They asked my name, the accurate character of my name. And then I say, my name is this, Yan. And then they let me go. And I think they get the wrong name from the hotel. And so, but then they realize that, and then they go up to the plane. And after going up to the plane, they check all the Wei Xiangzheng, the permits. And then when they saw my name, I was asked to go down the plane, get off. And the saying is, if you don't get off, the whole plane cannot fly. They will detain the whole plane. So I have no choice. I have to be detained. And that go through 3 days. And then with the rescue of the movement in Hong Kong, I was released after 3 days with a self-confession letter. And so then I went back to Hong Kong, and then and then I said that for this lifetime, I have to fight for democracy with Hong Kong people and also with all Chinese people.
So, Cheuk Yan, why you have attended all of the candlelight vigils? I'm always struck that Hong Kong people turn out 10,000, hundreds of thousands in the rain. They bring their children. They sit for hours on the grass and sing. Why? What is the significance of this to Hong Kong? This is something that happened in China. Is it a symbol of hopes and aspirations?
Yeah, I think going back to, actually, we have to go back to 89. It's a waking up for whole generation, my generation, that the whole generation began to fight for democracy, and not just for Chinese people, also for people in Hong Kong. You know, we have you remember the return of sovereignty in 97? So we are them ourselves facing this regime that suppressed the right that should kill their own people. So I think it's for the people of Hong Kong, I think it's the same fight. Our fight is the same fight as all Chinese fight, because we have the same regime that suppresses us. And I think even now it's even more important that we continue the fight, especially when we look at what happened in Hong Kong. Disqualification, legislator disqualification, candidates for standing for election, political prisoner out of the Occupy Central, and now the extradition agreement. So you cannot escape from the Canadian book said the claws of pandas. You cannot escape from that. And now the extradition agreement is about getting people from Hong Kong to extradite to China to be tried by Chinese judicial system, which is very, very, very innovative in framing you up, trumping up charges against you. They are so innovative that you will be shocked of how they do it. One of the things that did, of course, I was very angry on that, is that you are not even allowed to get a wine called the June 4th wine, June 4th memorial wine, and you are jailed for 3 years. Just for making this wine. And this is a regime that we're fighting against. And this is a law, put out by proposed by the Hong Kong government now, at this very moment, that you have to be trialed by this regime, extradite you back to China for trial. And so the fight needs to go on. And I think it's very important for us to also remember June 4th, because the whole legitimacy of the Communist Party regime is their weakness. They are not legitimate because they kill their own people. So I think it's very important we continue our June 4th memorial, our candlelight vigil in the Victoria Park.
Thank you, Yan. Now we go to Mak Yin-ting, who, as I said before, is both a working journalist. She's a correspondent in Hong Kong, but for Radio France International. But she's also been one of the leaders of the Hong Kong Journalists Association, which is the preeminent press freedom voice in Hong Kong. Let me ask you about your time in '89. You were a child reporter, yes?
Yes, I was a reporter for the Hong Kong Daily News, a Chinese newspaper. You may not know the name. Actually, I was on the same plane as Cheuk Yan, who grabbed away by the Public Security Bureau's guys. and actually, Cheuk Yan talked about, he was encouraged by the people who are coming out to the street and fight for their own fate. And regrettably, they're going out to fight for their own fate, but the media by then was not allowed to speak for the people. Basically, the Chinese reporter have a government line to follow, and that is why the people there was encouraged to see overseas media reporting on their fight of democracy. And you listen to some of my counterpart overseas telling you the stories during the lunch, and saying that how the Chinese people make their gratitude to the news report they made. And as a matter of fact, I have my own experience. That's why I fight for press freedom in Hong Kong after the June 4 event. I was I almost attacked by some soldiers when I, touring around to see how the army moving. And I was protected by old lady, actually, a group of old lady, not just one, because one holding my hand and, taking me away when some other old lady trying to stop the soldiers. And they risked their life to do so. It's just to ask me to do one thing, is to tell the story to the world. Not just their own experience, but what they fight for. And it tells you how important press freedom is. And especially when you're seeing the journalists during some march, they raise the banner saying journalists telling the truth. And it is very astonishing to a trained journalist like me in the West, from Western cultures, because telling truth is our nature, our job as a reporter. But in China, you have to fight for it. You have to, really go to the street and fight for it. And that is why after that, I swear to myself, because at that time, actually, the return of Hong Kong to China has been fixed. It is our fate. So I tell myself that I have to defend the press freedom in Hong Kong so as our colleagues need not face the same fate as the journalists at that time. So after the Tiananmen Square, and I go to study, and then when I going back to Hong Kong again, I joined the Hong Kong Journalists Association, which is the sole trade union of journalists, and serving the executive committee for over 20 years, and being the chairperson for 9 years, and to fight for the press freedom. Although our effort doesn't make have a full marks, but with our fight, at least the deterioration of press freedom will not be that fast. And I hope more and more people support us, then I think the fight can carry on much more easier.
Mak, I've heard you say that 1989 is why you work as a journalist today. Is that accurate?
Oh, no. Actually, I've been a journalist since 1984. And I was assigned to cover the June 4 events since April until the last day, and went back on to Hong Kong on 5th of June. So actually, I was determined to be the press freedom fighter, you can say. Beforehand, I was a member of the Hong Kong Journalists Association, but I was a sleeping member. Apart from paying bill, I won't do anything, I can tell you. I just, doing my own work. But after the Tiananmen Square incident, I go back and join the XCOM, which is a volunteer job, and fight for that since afterwards. I always telling jokes to my colleagues. I have one payment for two jobs. My pay job, of course, pay me my salary, and it allows me, or at least give me a chance to work for the volunteer work of the Journalists Association, because it's quite heavy, actually. I always teasing myself. I was the brain and also the cleaner of the whole association. You have to think about, how to fight, and you have to work it out. So, and that is the situation.
Thank you. I want to say that the Hong Kong Journalists Association is very well known outside of Hong Kong, and it is the organization that everyone looks to as the frontline journalists. So we're here to talk about dates. For Hong Kong, there are very significant dates. There's 1984, the year of the Sino-British Joint Declaration, which is an international treaty registered at the United Nations. It promises one country, two systems, Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong with a high degree of autonomy. So Martin Lee is a longtime democracy leader, and this July 1 marks another anniversary. It is the 22nd anniversary of the handover from Hong Kong to China. Reflect back, Martin, first to 1989, when you helped lead 2 million people marches, two separate ones, in Hong Kong's narrow streets. and then bring us forward to today about how the joint declaration's promises that were guaranteed by the international community, are they being upheld or not?
Well, the two marches were fantastic. I was then the vice chairman of the Hong Kong Alliance, Sitowa being the chairman. And at the end of the march, we set up a platform, so we were all on the platform, and we were waving to the people who came finally to that stage, and then they would disperse and go home. And my hand was tired. And then I used this hand, and I used this hand, and I said, I'm so tired, I want to go back to bed. But I want to see more people. So I had that feeling. And I remember the 4th of June that morning. I didn't know what happened because I was sleeping. And in those days, we had a landline. So in my extension in my bedroom, I switched it off. And of course, Hong Kong Alliance people were ringing me throughout the morning. And I only woke up because it was not a court day for me at 8 o'clock, answered the phone, and I couldn't believe it. And so they asked me, come to the Happy Valley, the race course, because we had prepared to meet there anyway on that day. And then when I got there, Sitowa, in fact, already gave orders to buy a coffin to lead the march. And I said, that's questionable. What would the people do? Because they're so angry already when you lead the procession with a coffin. I don't know how we can control the people. So we had a long argument until Sitowa said, okay, we put the coffin outside the offices of the Xinhua news agency. And I said, it's even worse. Because the main door is made of glass. So people will, of course, break open the door, and then what happens? So after some more arguments, Sitowa said, okay, cancel that order for the coffin. This is the first time I heard of anybody who ordered a coffin and then cancelled it. And then later on, we heard that a lot of journalists were trapped in Beijing, and they wanted to come home, and there was no way, because all their tickets expired. So I was asked to arrange for a plane to go there, and I don't have a plane. So I went to one of the sons-in-law of YK Pao, who was then the CEO of Dragon Air, Helmut Sohlmann, an Austrian guy. In politics, we were on opposite sides. But that evening, I rang him up at 11 p.m. I said, Helmut, I need your help. What help do you want? I said, I want a plane. Why? I said, I want to fly the journalists back to Hong Kong. He said, all right, I can't do anything tonight. Ring me tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. I rang him. He said, when do you want it? I said, I don't know. And 12 o'clock? I don't know. 2? I don't know. So he said, anyway, give me 2 hours notice. Why do you need 2 hours notice? I said, as soon as I find out when they will be there, I want the plane there. He said, I want the 2 hours to fly the ready plane there from Hong Kong. So then I said, okay, how much will it cost? Because the government may not pay it, the bill. All right. He says, I won't charge anything other than actual disbursements. All right. We won't make a single cent of profit. Okay. How much? He said about 130,000 Hong Kong dollars. That's okay. I can pay. So okay. So we had the plane. Went back to the Legislative Council because there was a debate going on. And I told the people, then my fellow legislators, I got a plane. Then they started to argue. Why Dragon Air? One guy said, why not British Airways? Another person said, surely Cathay. So I left the room. I went to the chief secretary, David Ford, but he was having a meeting. But his secretary said, don't worry, Mr. Lee. We know what to do. Just go use that plane. Don't wait for them. And if necessary, the government will pay. So the government paid. And then the plane took off. I got a phone call from Dragon Hair. Mr. Lee, good news and bad news. Good news is the plane is on its way. Bad news is without Lee Cheuk Yan.
That was the plane. Okay, we obviously have a full circle involving aviation here. I want to turn the conversation from aviation to extradition because there is an immediate threat to Hong Kong's free society. Human Rights Watch has written to the Hong Kong chief executive. The Washington Post said it would be, if the extradition law is passed, it would be tantamount to importing China's legal system to Hong Kong. And what it means, I think everyone in this room who's followed the kidnappings and abductions in Hong Kong, 5 publishers, a billionaire from the Four Seasons. And I think the big fear is, of course, that once you're on Chinese soil, you will be forced to give a televised confession, and the rule of law will not apply. So, Martin, you've spent your entire life fighting for the rule of law. Can you tell this group, and especially knowing that these are people who live, work, and visit Hong Kong, what are the risks to Hong Kong's free society, and what can they do about it?
Well, two questions. Each demands a long answer.
Make it short.
But the implication of this law is a very short bill. It's just amending the existing law. But the effect is that whereas today there is no arrangement between mainland China and Hong Kong for the rendition of fugitive from justice. Rendition meaning extradition within the same country. All right? Now suddenly, our chief executive wants it, which would mean that anybody in Hong Kong, including tourists, may face a risk of China wanting you back for an offense committed by you maybe 10 years ago or whatever. All right? For example, if you have been doing business in China 10 years ago, so you went in Shanghai in a hotel, they would produce the evidence that you were actually spending the night in that Shanghai hotel, all right? And you sold drugs on that night. And all they need is not even an affidavit, but only a witness statement to that effect. And that will be placed before the court, and you will be sent to China. And as Minky says, the moment you are there, they are very good at making you confess before the TV camera. That's a problem. And then, in other words, Hong Kong cannot guarantee the safety of anybody in Hong Kong. Not just us, but any one of you. Particularly those of you who make speeches today. Right? Now, they would not be so stupid to say, because of this political speech. No, because that's not extraditable. Right? They will concoct a case against you. And they're very imaginative. So they can concoct any case against you. So we cannot guarantee your safety. What was the second question?
What can this room do about it?
Well, many of you are very influential. Now, this can be stopped. I'll give you an example. In the year 2003, Hong Kong faced a similar thing when the government was pushing for the enactment of a law which would be dealing with treason, sedition, theft of state secrets because of Article 23 of the Basic Law, which requires Hong Kong to legislate on its own in relation to these matters. So it is a duty. And I thought we should also legislate, except that that particular bill would have seriously eroded 3 of our basic freedoms, of the press, of religion, and of assembly. That is why we opposed. And I didn't think we could possibly win, because we did not have the numbers in the Legislative Council, because our electoral laws are so flawed and unfair. And then, about 2 weeks before the passage of the bill, there was a press release from the White House saying that the US government was opposed to this bill and calling on the Hong Kong government to establish democracy as soon as possible. And once I got that, I talked to the British commissioner at the time, and he came up with a statement, very strong statement, to support us. And then the Australians, New Zealanders, and so on, Canadians, all came up to support. And that encouraged the Hong Kong people. So there was a huge demonstration on the 1st of July, 2003, the 6th anniversary, well over 500 million people. And that caused the Hong Kong government to, first of all, postpone the passage of the bill and later withdrew it. So that is a very good example how international support could help Hong Kong people to ward off that particular piece of legislation. So the same thing can happen.
Thank you to our Hong Kong guests. They have just arrived in New York last night, and they're on their way to Washington, D.C. I wanted to say that preserving freedom in Hong Kong is obviously desirable for the Overseas Press Club. It is also possible, and we want to thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you.